your guys' head today, and hopefully this sinks in, is I've coached a lot of people in businesses. I've spoken, all around the world. I was very fortunate enough to, speak at, I think, 33 different countries all around the world. And in every one of those countries, I always started off my presentation the same way, because I'm speaking to entrepreneurs, but I'm also speaking to the wantrepreneurs. You guys ever heard of the wantrepreneur? Some of you might be in that position right now where you have a job, you're doing this part-time, you're looking to get out of that job, but the wantrepreneur mindset is not something that I believe everybody has. I believe it's something that's been ingrained in everybody because society does it. So here's what I started in 33 different countries. I started the same way with my presentations, and maybe you guys can finish it for me. And Damien, you're sitting there, and I don't know if the audio's on, but I want you guys to finish this phrase. Go to school, get an education so you can get a J-O-B. J-O-B. Every one of you thought it, right? You know why? Because it's been conditioned our whole life. Go to school, get an education so you can get a job. You know what is not ingrained in your mind? Go to school, get an education so you can go out and create some jobs. So that's the entrepreneur mindset. Is like, how do we create these jobs? So I always had I've always seen society kind of running us one way. If you look at as an entrepreneur, we think things a little bit different. If you are that job taker, or you're, let me here give you another phrase. You guys can finish this for me. Credit cards are. Have you ever been told, Damien? Ever heard that from your father or a family member or somebody? Credit cards are
poison. No,
poison, bad, evil, terrible. Well, to an entrepreneur, credit cards are leverage. So credit cards are leverage. Go to school, get an education, get a job. So you're kind of filled with these phrases and stuff that kind of put you down this road. Our whole life, we've been conditioned to own a job or to have a job. And then I think a lot of us, we tend to take that over in business and own a job and work all these hours. And I was the same way. When I started my first business, I started a window and pressure washing company at an early age. And I started with a squeegee, a bucket, and a soap and water, because that's pretty much all that I could afford. And I started just knocking on doors and passing out flyers. And I started to build that business up. And I built it up. And really, I thought I was an entrepreneur. And one of my buddies told me, he goes, well, you're not really an entrepreneur, Jason. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, when you're an entrepreneur, you have other people working for you. And he said something to me. He goes, realistically, if you crossed the street right now, God forbid, you got hit by a bus and you got hurt, you're out of work, your income stops. And I remember he said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, you're totally right. So I was trading hours for dollars. And the only way I made money is if I was out working. So I look at that as I had a job. So now as I sit here today on a webinar with you guys, I started a new company just about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I started my fourth business, legitimately a good size, in scaling it up. And I've got guys working outside right now. I've got 2 crews on the road they're out producing genuine, income for me, so I can sit here and do that. So I wanted just to kind of paint that picture for you guys of kind of where you're at right now, where you want to go. And I don't know all of you, and I don't know, and I don't pretend to know where you're at in business. Some of you right now might be, working another job. You're doing this as kind of a side hustle. Some of you might be, hey, I'm trying to transition this into the big picture, big business. So some of this might ring true to you as like, yeah, it is kind of all me right now. And not saying that you have to go out and hire someone right away, but what you have to understand is that needs to be a transition, or at least a thought in your mind. I'm totally fine with anybody having their own business where they say, hey, listen, I just want to do this. It's all me, and be okay with that.
Jason, I'm still trying my ass off to get Katie Fletcher to understand that message. I'm still trying.
Yeah.
It just, she smokes it. She does so well, but she just won't hire anybody for years, right? So, but you're right. It doesn't start to scale until you scale one.
That's it. But let's go back, D. If we're talking about mindset, let's talk now. So Katie might have the mindset that a lot of other people have. Now, I don't care if you had a grandmother, a school teacher, a cousin, a brother, anybody that's been an influence in your life. I guarantee everyone on this call right now, on this webinar, has heard this phrase. If you want something done right, you gotta do it yourself.
Yeah, Home Depot style.
Right? If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Well, if that were the case, nobody would ever scale a big business. Jeff Bezos, you think he's going to be stuffing those boxes after he sold the Amazon account, after he took your credit card? It's on you can't do it.
It's the reason why our resellers don't build their own apps. Like they would all not be successful if they were trying to build their own apps while they're trying to sell them, right? So
100%, right? Know your lane, figure out what you can do. Because I know I'm not good at a lot of things. I can do a lot of things, but I am very good at speaking. I'm very good at connecting, creating relationships, and I feel I'm good at sales. So if you take everything else out of my business that I hate, like, oh my, put a spreadsheet in front of me and you see me just kind of, I just want to shoot myself. I can't stand that side of my business. I don't want to understand the numbers. I want someone to sit down with me like my CPA and say, hey, let's look over this P&L. How are we doing? How are we looking? So I can go out, create more sales. So what you want to do as an entrepreneur is you want to focus on your strengths and outsource all of your weaknesses. Steve Jobs, one of the best things Steve Jobs ever said, and I remember this, he says, you know what? We don't go out and hire smart people so we can tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. So think about that in your own business. Are you doing something right now that is not the best use of your time? Nor maybe are you not the best fit for it? And can you bring in a strategic partner? Can you bring somebody else in there? And can you have somebody else that kind of fills that gap? So like I said, the mindset is kind of where, everyone, I don't blame anybody because society has always geared us down that road. I mean, my grandfather, who was the hardest working guy I ever met. I mean, I remember me and my brother would just sit there and feel my grandpa's hands. And when he shook my hand, he was all calloused. And he would say, that's what hard work looks like, son. And he goes, one day you'll have hands like your grandpa. But my grandfather was, he was like a contractor, he did construction work. And in his mindset was the more money he wants to make means the more nails that he has to hammer. What if he just hired one guy to hammer nails for him so he could go out and draw up some plans, design a house, do something else? But the best use of his time was not hitting the hammer or hitting the nail. So I don't know if this is sinking in, D. Is this kind of what you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just that whole using your dad's example, your grandpa's example. Was he one of the type, where he just felt that he was the best one that could build it? Nobody else could build it better than him. Therefore, he had to hammer every nail because he's the only one that can hammer it the way he hammered it.
Get out of my way, son. Let me show you how it's really done. That kind of guy, right? And there's still today, I coach guys all the time, in service businesses and other businesses. I've coached everybody and they all say the same thing. They're all like, you know what? Well, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done perfect. And they're not going to do it exactly the way I do it. And I say, all right, I agree with that to some case. Some of us, we do take great pride in what we do and we're very meticulous. We understand exactly what we do. But I look at it this way. Can you hire somebody and still be better than most? Can you still be better than most? Because if you're better than most, then you can get a great amount of market share in any business. If you have the mindset is I got to be best, I got to be perfect, I got to have everything exactly the way it's supposed to be, you're never going to scale anything because no one's going to be as perfect as you. No one's ever going to work as hard as you. No one's ever going to put the blood, sweat, and tears into your business like you do because nobody has the same ambition as what you have. Now it's your job as the entrepreneur to paint a vision for your team so they feel like they're a part of something. And you can get great people working for your organization that feel they're a part of something. But I truly don't believe you can ever really get somebody unless you make them a 50-50 partner that buys into the same perfection that you strive and that you try to get out of yourself. Right?
Yeah. And I think that whole perfection thing's a trap in our business because it prevents action. That perfection thing, just from the onset, it's a problem, right? Like we're never, ever going to do anything perfect with regards to business.
That's it.
Even the deal that you sold that was the big $10,000 deal could have been 20. It just, nothing we do is perfect. I think imperfect action that my friend Omar always says, imperfect action is better than no action.
Yes.
And I think that's how we need to understand in the people that we hire. It's like, hey, just like you're saying, if they can be at least 80% of what I can do, I would argue that's even good.
Yes. Oh, and you could build an empire around that.
Give me 5 of them and I can scale. Now I can do way more of the activity that makes this money
100%.
than what I can do as a single individual.
100%. Don't get bogged down in the tactical. You want to spend your time in the transformational. Tactical is, taking care of one or two things, your tasks that are medial. Like you could hire a virtual assistant to do half the tasks that you're doing right now. Like data entry, spreadsheets. I have virtual assistants take data from one program and put it in another so I can get my numbers, and the numbers is what I'm looking at. Like if I'm looking over my cost of acquisition, my lifetime value of a client, all those things that I need to know and the metrics you need to understand in a business. But it's not my job to sit here and stare at one program, carry all those numbers in, because, the one thing that I have that's worth more than anything else, and I think everybody on here would agree, and if you don't agree, you should, because your time is the most valuable asset you have. The most valuable asset any of us have is our time. And how are we spending our time? So I always look at it as business owners. When I coach companies, I say, hey, listen, where are we spending some time right now? And I don't want to say spending, but where are we putting time in that we could give to somebody else or hire somebody else? What if we hired a $12 or $15 an hour employee? And I said, okay, this is your new employee. You got to give them some tasks. What would you take off your plate right now that you feel you could task to somebody else for $10 or $15 an hour? And I have them write down those tasks. And some of you that are listening right now, think about those tasks right now that you do in a day-to-day, whether it's, data entry, whether it's cold calling, whether it's email follow-up, whether it's, taking over, data from one site to another, or whatever those tasks might be for yourself. Which, if any, could you stop doing? Because here's the thing, my coach, Nito Cobain, Nito Cobain.
I love the stories. There's a lot of great stories in this area, in this region.
Yeah. So Nito Cobain, one of the best speakers of all time, if not the best speaker. I've enjoyed him more than anyone else I've ever met. He sold his Great Harvest Bread Company for, I think, like $700 million. He is a multi-millionaire, sits on the board of BB&T Bank, very, very well-respected man. And he says to me one day, he goes, Jason, most people have a to-do list, but the most successful people in the world have a stop doing list too. Think about that for a minute. To do is transactional. We can all have our to-do lists and they're important, but a stop doing list will transform your life. So if you had to stop doing anything in your business right now and give it to somebody else, that's transformational, because what does it give us back, Damien? What's it give us back that's the most valuable asset we have? Time. So on this call today, guys, what I thought about is if I could give you guys a little bit more time, if I could give you an hour a day, if I could give you a couple hours in a week, and you took that time to spend on customer acquisition. If you had 5 hours extra a week to spend on customer acquisition, could your life change? Could your business change? I don't know, Damien, this audience. So if you gain a new customer, what could that mean as far as revenue for an annual contract for one of these?
Yeah, let's go with a nice average number of $12,000.
$12,000.
And I'm using $1,000 a month retainer. Ad spend would be on top of that, and that's not factored in because that passes off through to the costs anyway. But yeah, let's say $12,000 contract.
Perfect. So now you're looking at is, okay, if you spend 5 hours a week and you're looking at only acquisition. Now, if you could spend that time, could you acquire in 1 week, in those 5 hours, could you acquire one new client? Is it possible? Okay. I would assume that it is yes. So I always look at it as, okay, so if I have the extra time, what am I going to do with that time? And it's very important because, unless you're looking for freedom, unless you're looking for, and this is something that I'm totally okay with. If you're to a point right now where you say, listen, I want to build this business up so I can take myself away from it and spend more time with my family, so I can finally go out on that fishing boat and spend my weekends either fishing or golfing or spending more time with my family, that's fine. But if you're in the position where you're in the growth mode, and I think every business has 3 different modes. You're either in the growth mode, you're in the comfort mode, or you're in the oh shoot mode. I could use the other word. Damien will probably use the other word. Is it okay to curse on here, D? Okay. You're in the oh shit zone, right? And here's what I mean by that. growth is every new business that starts up. Anyone who starts up a new business is in the growth mode. Why? Because you're broke. You're usually broke when you start something. The only way that you can become successful and the only way that you can pay your bills is to go out and make money. So you're knocking on doors, you're making the phone calls, you're emailing, you're going to networking events, and you're working your butt off to create this business. And that's usually where companies have the most growth. It's always in that first year because they're hustling. Then all of a sudden the phone starts ringing and, hey guys, this is me. I'm pretty much preaching my own story here. So I built up my first business, my window and pressure washing company. And all of a sudden phones were ringing. I was coming into work. I would look and I had it was back when the answer machines used to, sit there and blink. And I'd be like, oh, got a bunch of voicemails. I'd play them. I'd sit there, take all the information, call the customers back. Everything was good. And I had people working for me. And so that growth phase started to turn into a comfort phase where I came in and all of a sudden I was putting the feet up on. I might've been playing around on Facebook. I wasn't doing everything. I was playing golf. I was taking less and less time in the office. I wasn't hustling. I wasn't networking, but I was comfortable. Now here's what happens. The comfort phase leads to the next phase, which is the oh shit phase. Here's why. Because while you're in that comfort phase, that middle phase, you'll have other people that are doing the same thing that you're doing right now, but they're hungry. They're coming in and they're just firing all cylinders. They're making the phone calls. They're calling the people. They're showing up. They're doing the networking. They're creating the strategic partners. They're doing everything that you don't do in the comfort phase. And why do I say that leads to that oh shit phase? Because what happens is all of a sudden somebody else gets a market share. In my neighborhood, I never forget this guy's name is Joe McCumber. Joe, if you ever see this webinar, you know that I remember the day that you took over my market share. And all of a sudden, this guy, Joe McCumber, he owned a company called the Cleanup Group. Cleanup Group comes in my area. This guy's hustling. He's at every networking event. And I started to see relationships that I had with big property managers who gave me tons of revenue. Tons. I mean, like $150,000 a year contract from one of them. And they're like, hey, we're going to go with the Cleanup Group. He's got this new product that is better than yours. And it's kind of, we don't want you walking on the roofs. We want you to use a special product. And I was like, who's this Joe McCumber guy? So what happened was me sitting in the comfort phase of my business led to the oh shoot phase, which is I have to go back to the growth phase. Now in my businesses, and what I would say to you guys is if you can handle it, if you can stay in there, always stay in the growth phase. You're always growing. It's why Damien, when we talked, I mean, the last time we spent, quite a few hours and quite a few days, and man, it was like a whole week together. For a while there, we did a couple events back to back, and we got to just chat. And what I loved about Damien is that, his mind was always working. He was always thinking about the next thing. And as he's, giving you guys, these great tools and these great apps, he's always like, oh, I think this one will be even better. This is what I'm working on right now. And hey, this is something I know is going to change it's going to be revolutionary. Well, that's growth mindset. Always thinking about what's growth. So for everyone on here in your phase of business right now, let's keep it in the growth phase. So what does that look like? Is it, adding on, oh, did someone want to say something?
You're good.
Okay. So is it something that you want to add on? Is it a new service? Is it utilizing one of these new apps? Is it giving your clients something else that they will need? Because if you're always positioning yourself on growing, then you have less chance of somebody else taking over your business. So D, I'll let you jump in here. Whatever you want something to add.
Doesn't Mark Cuban have a quote? I'm going to probably butcher this. I butcher all quotes, but it's something like, you need to work so hard like someone is out to kill you. Like someone's out to, you know what I mean? Like you need to work in your business so hard like everyone is out to destroy your business. Right?
100%.
Yeah. I totally butchered that up. If anybody knows that quote, it's actually one of my favorite guys that pops good business quotes out there. So if anybody knows that, put it in there. But yeah, I really think that this is resonating really well, man, because, for our agency owners, it's important that they sell. They have to get grips with the fact that they have to frickin' sell because the products and services do not sell themselves. I mean, they do because they're so good, but they don't. Someone's got to freaking convince you or at least encourage you to enroll.
Yeah.
And the thing is if you don't like it, then you better hire it, because if you just ignore it, you're just buying products and not making any money and never selling anything. And I've unfortunately seen a lot of that. I've also seen the other side. I've seen the other side where they just Katie Fletcher it and they just beat the bushes so damn hard. They make 6 figures a year, beating the bushes. She's in her 70s. She's beating the bushes. And I know that looks like 7 figures a year if she'll just take a moment to lean in on scaling. Leanne brought a good point up earlier. You know, let's say Katie might have nobody's going to sell an app to a pet hotel better than I will. But one of the things that Leanne suggests here is that people don't consider that sometimes the person you hire could do the job even better than you. Right. Now, Grandpa wasn't going to have it. He doesn't want to hear that. He's not going to believe it if you said it to him. But in today's world, like, you'd be surprised. You can bring someone in 20 years younger than you that might run circles around you just because of what they've learned over the last couple of years. So 100%. I think that's a great point, Leanne. Thank you for sharing. I think that everyone, you know, they're really apprehensive about scaling because, look, you're bringing on costs. And I don't suggest anybody, you know, goes hire 6 people because it's not easy just to hire people. I suggest that they always first start hiring in sales. You know, it's okay. Like, you don't like spreadsheets, you don't like financial, you don't want to do all that stuff. Sub that out. Don't hire that in the beginning phases. Sub that out. Fractional CFO work, CPAs, bookkeepers, all that stuff. Get someone you trust, family, friend. But selling is the first area you need to address in a digital marketing agency, because when someone's selling, well, you're on a meeting like this and you're able to get more people interested in your agency, or you're networking, or you're able to get on a plane and go to Florida for an event, for an event where you're able to network. Meanwhile, someone is talking to all those clients that you would otherwise be doing. That's the first area of scale. The other reason why I like that, I'm going to turn it back over to you right now. I just want to share some of this.
No, I like it.
The other reason why I like that is because if you get the right people in the sales side, it's usually a commission-only job. If you make the commission lucrative enough, it's the least risky position to scale. Because you could hire 5 people and make it all commission only. And technically, you know, at 1099, again, there's laws and all that stuff. And this is a 1099 independent contractor thing. Just put my little NDA out there, my little disclosure out there. But it's really that's a position where you can afford to take some risks and try to put someone at the front end to work your leads. Now, where I would argue that maybe you wouldn't want to do that is if you spent a lot of money on leads, you got all these leads coming in and you want to make sure you have a really super closer, but you're not going to get there until you start hiring a salesperson and you and that salesperson and maybe 2 are selling and making revenue so that you can afford to pay for great lead acquisition. You got to start somewhere. And as the solopreneur that many of you are that are on here, I would encourage you. By the way, I'll just put a little thing out there. If anybody's interested in hiring salespeople, we got something in the GoMobile archives called Simple Agency Sales System. We teach you how to find closers. Just hit up support at GoMobileSolutions.com. That's the first area where you need to scale, in my opinion.